Well, Europe now says it's ready to discuss a proposal at the WTO to temporarily suspend intellectual property rights on COVID-19 vaccines. This, of course, after the US said it would back the idea. Now, this marks what could be a major shift in the bloc's stance on the issue and the global race to vaccinate. But as CGTN's Toni Waterman explains, the U-turn in Washington not only left Brussels on the back foot, but also scrambling to defend its position against the waivers.
Europe has long contended that suspending intellectual property rights, essentially giving away the internal secrets of how vaccines are made, could stifle innovation and wouldn't necessarily fix supply problems or speed up global vaccination like supporters of the proposal claim. Brussels feels that the only way to solve these issues is by expanding capacity, which it is trying to do internally. But with the U.S. now backing these patent waivers, Europe and the U.K. are now pretty much the only major developed economies standing in the way. And with that in mind, Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said the EU is open to discussing all options on the table.
The European Union is also ready to discuss any proposal that address the crisis in an effective and pragmatic manner. And that's why we are ready to discuss how the US proposal for waiver on intellectual property protection for COVID vaccines could help achieve that objective.
The solution Brussels would ultimately like to see is the so-called third way, which has been promoted by the new WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Now, under this approach, vaccine manufacturing would be licensed to countries or companies based on multilateral rules, which supporters say would ensure adequate supplies while also protecting intellectual property. AstraZeneca already has this type of agreement in place with the Serum Institute of India. But pressure is certainly mounting. Of the 1.1 billion vaccine doses administered globally, just 0.3% have gone to low-income countries. The rest are being snatched up by rich nations. And that is not sitting well with a lot of people here in Europe. The French and Belgian governments have already signaled their support for these waivers. And this issue is going to be front and center at a leaders' summit in Portugal this weekend. Toni Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
Well, for more on this, I'm now joined by Dr. Hu Yuan Cheong, a senior legal and policy advisor for the Access campaign of MSF, or Doctors Without Borders. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Now, of course, while the US's support for a patent waiver has been welcomed by public health advocates around the world, the International Pharmaceutical Federation, among others, has voiced its disappointment. They've argued that the focus right now should rather be on eliminating trade barriers and addressing distribution bottlenecks. What is your view on this? Are poorer countries essentially ready to take advantage of a patent waiver?
Thank you very much. We are very happy to see US has changed the position because this marked a very dramatic breakthrough after 7 months of delay in this process of negotiation. And we acknowledge there's multiple challenges facing this pandemic and facing access to sufficient vaccines in developing countries, and many different measures and policy interventions are needed to address multiple challenges. But the intellectual property barrier that hinders the leverage of the global capacity to contribute to the production and the supply of vaccines and medicines and other medical tools has to be addressed immediately. So we disagree with what the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association's point in terms that other measures need to be used to address other matters, but the fact that their member company have been controlling the technology and not willing to openly share those technology with the developing countries to leverage the maximum level of capacity and contribution has to be addressed now by government, and then adopting the waiver going forward, hopefully, would empower government to have an additional legal tool to move around and change this situation.
Well, Doctor, we know, of course, that initially South Africa and India, having put forward this proposal, were also addressing concerns around medical devices and diagnostic technologies as far as intellectual property is concerned. What is your take on this? Does equal access to this type of medical intervention or equal access to medicines overall go beyond the vaccines themselves when it comes to fighting COVID-19?
Exactly. We totally agree with this and agree with the original scope that been proposed by South Africa, India, and joined actually by nearly the whole continent of Africa and many developing countries. Access to medicine, treatment, and diagnostic and devices, materials, raw materials, and technology needed to produce those products are absolutely essential and have to be free from monopoly. So we acknowledge and also call it a crucial attention and step for all countries to make sure all technology are included, including vaccines.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hu Huanqiong, joining us there from Geneva.